It's time for March Madness. I am so excited. I can't wait till Thursday. We've got so many games this week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm going to switch it up from what I usually do, which is talk about all the different sports on TV throughout the course of a weekend. What I am going to do is just pick out some games that I think are going to be really interesting and intriguing games to watch and go into those a little bit. But first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the tournament itself and how we've got to where we got to this point, and what to look for in these games. I'm not going to predict all kinds of different scores and spreads, and I'm not going to do all that. But I am going to kind of tell you how I look at games and what I'm going to be looking for in some specific games that I think are going to be good to watch. So the one thing about the tournament is dependent upon seeding and brackets. So it depends on where the committee puts certain teams and how they seed them. Well, as far as berths into the tournament, the Big 12 got 7 teams, the Big 10 got 12 teams, and the SEC got 14 teams. Now, in my opinion, they made some mistakes with seeding. West Virginia should have gotten in. North Carolina shouldn't have gotten in. And then Michigan State, in my opinion, like the Big 10 in general, is overrated. Michigan State lost in their conference tournament and got a 2 seed, which is ridiculous. Michigan actually won the tournament. Michigan is a 5 seed, and they won the conference tournament. So that really doesn't make any sense to me. So why are they playing these conference tournaments if the champion is seeded 5 and one of the runner-ups is seeded 2? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Another seeding issue I had, a bunch of teams that I've been talking about for the last few weeks. One of them is Drake. Drake finished the year at 30-3, ran right through their conference tournament, and they got an 11 seed. I thought they would be probably an 8 or so. UCSD, California, San Diego, 30-4, got a 12th seed. I know why these teams are seeded where they are, because people don't think they're very good. But I think these teams are going to surprise some people in this tournament. And again, these are teams that I've been talking about if you've been watching my videos for a few weeks. Now, one of the questions that I have, and we're going to see what the answer is going to be, is I did a video a bunch of weeks back after the college football season when a lot of people said that the SEC wasn't that good in football this past year and that the Big 12 was a better football conference. Well, the SEC is a better football conference. I don't care what the results were. The same thing goes for basketball this year. The SEC was probably the deepest conference ever in the history of college basketball. What I'm hoping doesn't happen for the SEC is that this grind of a season where there's been really no off games in their conference for anybody, where this doesn't take a toll on these teams and fatigue sets in, and these teams aren't as good as they were during the season. Auburn, for example, is not going into this tournament on a very good streak right now. Is it fatigue? Too many tough games? Same with Alabama. Has not been playing well recently. I hope that's not the case in this tournament, because I would hate to see that happen. I would hate to see a Michigan State team that I don't think is very good, who happened to, by the way, get a very favorable seed and bracket in the draw. I hope that they don't get to the Final Four or win the championship and everybody says, oh, the Big Ten's better than the SEC. That's ridiculous if that happens. I hope it doesn't happen, but we'll see. Couple things to look for in these games. Just as a lot of sports, styles make fights, and some of these teams like to play fast. Some of these teams like to play slow. You want to try to look at how these teams play. Some of the slower teams can, a lot of times, they can slow down these fast teams, like in Alabama, that likes to run and gun a little bit. I look at teams that make free throws, very important. Teams with better coaching. Coaching is important in a tournament like this because you've got quick turnarounds on the weekends where you play Thursday and Saturday, and then you're playing again on Friday and Sunday. So you don't have a whole lot of time to prepare. These teams, most of them are not familiar with each other. Really important, the coaching. Teams with better athletes. Can't stress this enough. Better athletes get to loose balls. Better athletes rebound, defense. Perfect example. BYU went into the Big 12 tournament. They won 8 games in a row. They were hot. And they went up against Houston, who just shut them down offensively. They were all over them. Didn't allow them to get their shots off because they're so athletic and fast. They get right through screens. They get to loose balls. They totally shut BYU down. BYU is going to be playing VCU. I'm going to talk about that game. That could potentially be the same problem for BYU that they just had against Houston, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Guard play, very important in the tournament. Why? Guards have the ball in their hands most of the times, so they make a lot of decisions. They can turn the ball over a lot. Very important. Free throws at the end of the game. The guards have the ball in their hands, handling the ball. If they're going to give up a foul and get fouled, the guards are usually the ones that have to go to the free throw line and make the free throws to ice a game. Turnovers. More turnovers for a team, less possessions for the other team. Very simple. And more scoring for the other team. The game today has become so reliant on the three-pointer, three-point shooting percentage, three-point defense percentage. Also really important. Just a note that no team has won the NCAA tournament shooting less than 30% on their three-pointers. That's just something to watch for. And then, of course, the old saying, defense wins championships. Every sport, defense wins championships. Connecticut had great defense the last 2 years, and that's what carried them to the last 2 national championships. All right, so I'm going to take a look at some of these games that I talked about. The first one that is of interest to me, and I mentioned BYU, is Thursday at 3:05 Eastern Time, and it's on TNT, is BYU is playing Virginia Commonwealth. And this is a game of contrasting styles. BYU scores 81 points a game, which is 28th in the country, and VCU allows 62.4 points a game, which is 8th in the country. So something has to give there. BYU is a good shooting team. They shoot 37.6% on their three-pointers. Very, very good number. They also shoot 48.2% on their field goals. VCU, on the other hand, is a good team on defense. I mentioned the points against, but also they create a lot of possessions based on blocks. They're 6th in the country in blocks. So the question is going to be, can VCU do the same thing that Houston did, suffocating BYU shooters? So that's the first game that I'm really going to be interested in. The second game that I really like, and I've talked about this team for a few weeks now, is Yale. And Yale is playing a team out of the SEC, Texas A&M. Yale is no stranger to the NCAA tournament and having success. They beat Auburn in the tournament last year. So they know how to do this. This is something where they're not going to be overmatched and they're not going to be overwhelmed by Texas A&M. They beat Auburn, like I said, last year in the tournament. So the things that Yale has going for them, they average 81 points a game. They are 11th in the country at 49% on their field goals, and they create a lot of easy baskets with assists. They're 31st in the country in assists. The one thing about A&M, statistically, they're horrible. Horrible. Worst field goal shooting team in the tournament. They are 317th in the nation in three-point shooting. The thing that they have going for them is athleticism and rebounding. They're 2nd in the country in rebounding. They average 45.5 rebounds a game. An amazing stat. They get 42% of their misses on the offensive end. Think about that. 42% of the time they shoot the ball, they get the rebound. So think about how many extra shots and extra possessions that is. That's going to potentially be a problem for Yale. We'll have to see, but Yale's going to really have to shoot the lights out in this game to win this game, but they do have a really good chance. The next game I'm going to be watching after that is going to be the 11th seed Drake at the 6th seed Missouri, and this game is going to be played in Wichita, and it's at 6:35 on True TV. Now, Drake is another team that I've talked about, and I really like their style. They slow the game down. They play at a slow pace, and Missouri is just the opposite. Missouri likes to score. They play at a fast tempo, and they like to score. So Drake is actually first in the country points against at 58.4 points against, and Missouri, on the other hand, is ninth in scoring in the country at 84.5. Field goal percentage allowed, Drake is 28th at 48.1%. And on field goals made, Missouri is 19th at 48.5%. One of the things that I'm looking at in this game is Mark Mitchell, who is one of Missouri's best players, may not play in this game or may not play in the tournament. He sat out the SEC tournament. That's an inside player. That could be a big loss for them. Missouri also shoots 37.3 from three-point range, and they actually have more free throws made and attempted than any other team in the tournament. So they could score. The question is going to be which style in this game is going to prevail. Is it going to be the slow down tempo for Drake or the up tempo for Missouri? The next game on Thursday, 9 o'clock. The 12th-seeded UCSD San Diego against Michigan, seeded 5th. And this game is on TBS at 9 o'clock. Now, I've talked a lot about UCSD, and UCSD has 30 wins, so they're a legitimate team in this tournament, and they're playing the Big Ten tournament champions in Michigan. UCSD is a defensive team that also likes to slow it down. So they're 6th in the country at 61.6 points allowed per game. They are 4th in the country in steals at 9.9 per game. And they're actually 1st in turning the ball over with the least amount of turnovers per game at 8.7. On the other hand, Michigan is 342nd in turnovers per game. 14.1 turnovers per game. So you've got one of the worst turnover teams in Michigan against the best team that does not turn the ball over in UCSD. Where Michigan is going to have the advantage in this game is inside with size. They've got 2 7-footers. Michigan has also played in a lot of close games this year. They've won 12 games by 4 points or less. So that could give them an advantage if this is a tournament style every possession matters game. Another game, though, contrasting styles make fights. So we're going to see how this one goes. Now, this game that I'm going to talk about next is going to be a fun game to watch because it's two teams with fairly similar styles that play a lot of offense. And it's the 13th seed Akron against the number 4 seed Arizona. And this game is on True TV at 6:35. And Akron, a lot of people don't know about because they're a small school. They're 8th in the country at scoring at 84.6 points a game. And Arizona, everybody knows, out of the Big 12, got to the Big 12 championship game final. And they average 81.7 points a game, which is 22nd in the country. Arizona is also a very good free throw shooting team. They're 15th in the country at 78.4. They're 17th in the country in rebounding at 43 rebounds a game. And they're 31st in assists at 16.3 per game. So Arizona is a really skilled offensive team, and so is Akron. I think that the duo for Akron, which is Nate and Tavari Johnson, they average about 30 points a game between them. They're going to have to put up some points against Caleb Love, who's the leading scorer for Arizona. He averages 16.6 a game. If you like scoring, this is going to be a good game to watch. So that would be one. Finally, the last game I'm going to talk about is going to be the 12th-seeded Liberty Flames against the 5th-seeded Oregon Ducks. And the interesting thing about Liberty is a lot of people don't know about Liberty, but Liberty is another one of these defensive teams where they're 9th in the country at points against at 62.9. And they don't score a whole lot. They're 102nd in scoring at 76.6. But the thing about Oregon is a very mature team. They've been in the tournament. They've got older players. They've got players that have a lot of experience in the postseason. Oregon is also a very good free throw shooting team at 76.3. There's nothing statistically great about Oregon. They're just a good, solid team, and they have a really good coach in Dana Altman. This game is going to be fun to watch. I think that Oregon is probably going to wind up coming out of this game, but this is going to be a late game that's going to be fun to watch. So one other thing before I wrap it up, I'm going to give you some trends to watch out for when you do your brackets. So the first one is going to be to take 11 seeds. Take the number 11 seeds. Why? They are 29 and 27 since 2001, with 91% of them underdogs. So the 11 seeds have done pretty well. Stay away from the 10 seeds. Stay away from the number 10 seeds. They are 14 and 26 over the last 10 years. If an 8 seed plays a 9 seed, take the underdog. They are 57 and 33 over the last 34 years. So fill out your brackets. Feast on all this college basketball. I'm so excited. I can't wait for this weekend. Actually, it starts Thursday. I will see you next week for the games for the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the basketball.